Hi everyone. In our previous session, we have tried looking at concepts where, and specifically on a tutorial point of view, we try to prepare an application. For that, మనం VM create చేసి, we went into that VM and installed Docker and tried to see, we cloned that repository, we have went inside, we have looked at this config YAML and we have did a Docker compose which has built the images. Then we try to run the application so that so when you do this building of images of this compose, it will automatically build the containers out of that images, building that is, and we have checked whether the application is working properly or not. Once everything is been done, then we went ahead and created an ACR. And in the ACR, మనం ఏం చేసాము అంటే we have tried running these commands, and then we have tried running these commands where if you could see where the repository is being cloned. If you remember, the repository is being cloned in a particular location. And in that location, when I went inside that location, that's when I tried to run this. So inside this folder is where we have SRC folder, and in the SRC folder, there's a product service application. And we try to build that one. And how did you build it? Now, when we are trying to do this scenario, we played with Docker Compose and everything. But here, using this command azacr build hyphen registry, it's automatically building that as an image, whichever is there inside this, and then it is going to push that into a uh, this registry. And for that, what did we do? The image name we mentioned as aka store demo. Inside it, we have mentioned product service and then latest. Now, if I go inside the images, there are the repositories, you would be finding aka store demo, product service, order service, storefront, all these three items, where it is the latest tag. Now, once that is done, we went ahead and even asked the repositories list, and it would have been given all these ones, which we are able to see it from portal. The next steps which we have done is we have to create a cluster. Now, a cluster is pretty much simple. To run the a kubectl, we are trying to run this command in install CLI and all that, and then we could create a cluster, and then we could connect the nodes and all that. For this demo, that's what they're asking for. Now, there you go. Let me go ahead and create this. What I would like, Ubuntu Linux, I can find with it anything. Basic. Integration. New limit 12. I think we got this. I submitted a request for quota increase and it has given it. It's very much important. I'll try another size, otherwise. Okay. All CPUs are needed for this configuration, but only 0 CPUs. Okay. I'll try to refresh this. And I'll try to create a cluster. share node pool. I want 3 node pools. That's what they have tried in their demo, that they are given 3 nodes. And most of the times you would need n+1. That is an odd number point of view. We will go ahead and create it. Will be created. Meanwhile, we'll talk about the next item which we have. That is deploy container storage. So in this session, we'll focus more on try to understand more about a container storage, because few core concepts you need to understand about Azure networking. How do you use storage? Why networking? How do you connect the containers? How do you connect the pods communication? How do you connect the cluster? How do you expose the cluster to outside network, or you secure it? So networking services are very important. How do you store the data that is generated in the containers, and how secure is that data, and how faster it is between the applications to improve the performance. So in that point of view, storage networking are kind of important concepts. Along with it, there are other configurations. How do you scale up a Kubernetes? How do you deploy in Kubernetes? So that's where we are having most of these are the interview questions which you will always see. Uh, and if we go about understanding container storage, there are uh, if I go into the concepts and talk about storage, that's how to. This is not needed. Storage options not needed. Core concepts. Yeah, there it is. So what storage options for an application in Kubernetes service? What kind of storage options we can provide is something which you have to know. So there are specifically in terms of ephemeral or disk, which we call ephemeral storage option. And then we have persistent volume claims, which you use for Azure disk, connecting to Azure disks. And then we have Azure files, NetApp files, blob storage, and then what else? Azure files, disk, ephemeral disks, and we can even connect databases. But most of the times, so these are all lot of concepts which they're trying to talk about when you want to create and manage it. We can't discuss everything in one go, but let's understand here. Node is the pod is actually running in the master node. If you see and understand this, pods are running in the master nodes, and we can look at pods are running in the worker nodes, and so there are different worker nodes. I have created 3 worker nodes, 3 VMs. And so the pods, whichever I'm going to create and all that, they will be running in parallelly in all the worker nodes, how many pods I wanted to scale and all that. Now, what is a pod? It has one or more containers in it, which will end of the day run the workloads. Now, data ఏం generate అవుతుందో దాని నుంచి ఇదంతా, it should be going inside the to some location. If at all you're not doing it, suppose I'm not going to connect any storage option to AKS, what is going to do? That means the OS is the machines which you have created at end of the day have some level of storage inside it. దానికంటూ ఒక స్పెసిఫిక్ స్టోరేజ్ అమౌంట్ ఉంటుంది కదా, ఆ ఓఎస్ డిస్క్ సైజ్ ఎంత ఉంటుందో ఏంటో. ఓకే. ఆ VM స్పెసిఫికల్గా నువ్వేమైనా డిస్క్ అటాచ్ చేస్తే ఆ స్టోరేజ్ ఆప్షన్ కూడా ఉండొచ్చు. ఓకే, ఐ మీన్స్ దట్ విల్ ఆల్సో బి సఫిషియంట్ ఇఫ్ కేస్ ఇఫ్ యూర్ ట్రైంగ్ టు కమ్యూనికేట్ టు క్లస్టర్ అండ్ ఆల్ దట్. బట్ ఇప్పుడు ఆ పాడ్ అనేది ఎక్కడ రన్ అవుతుంది? ఒక వర్కర్ నోడ్ 1 అని తీసుకుంటే దానికి ఒక 100 GB అని ఉంటే, ఓకే, వాట్ ఎవర్ యూర్ గోయింగ్ టు డూ, that pod is going to run everything is all the secured environment, but the consumption will happen within that limits anamata. Now if the pod is failing, the container is failing and all that, the data will be lost. You have to understand this, that the data will not be anymore available. Now this is actually a good enterprise applications, this is a good practice that you have to follow these things. No, right? Okay. We can't actually follow this kind of sort of methods which will lose our data which we are trying to generate. సో అలాంటి సిచ్యువేషన్స్ లోనే ఎఫ్ఆర్ఎంఎల్ అనేది డిస్కషన్ వచ్చింది. Azure disks, as you know, data disks అంటాం VMs కి వచ్చినప్పటికి. Okay, where you are storing managed or unmanaged disks ఇవన్నీ. There you are storing the data in this disks. Okay, and you have Azure file share where you can connect it to multiple clusters and get access it and run it and give a consistent access to all the pods ఇవన్నీ. So situation బట్టి you will be choosing what kind of things. You will be choosing ephemeral type of OS disk when you have మోర్ డేటా డ్రివెన్ అప్లికేషన్స్ ఉన్నప్పుడు. అంటే ఏంటి అంటే ఇన్ కేస్ ఒక్కోసారి ETL డేటా ట్రాన్స్ఫర్మేషన్స్ ఇవన్నీ డేటా అనలిటిక్స్ పాయింట్ ఆఫ్ వ్యూ ఇదంతా దే విల్ ట్రై టు రన్ ఇట్ ఇన్ an AKS cluster or Kubernetes cluster point of view. And when you are trying to do such heavy load of data transformations or accessing data or retrieving or whatever it has to be done, అదంతా మనం క్లస్టర్ ఒక దాంట్లో యూస్ చేస్తున్నప్పుడు we actually prefer that kind of situations ephemeral disk option or storage option for your machines. As you can see, ephemeral will be within the node. Here, if you are seeing this is option is you're entirely seeing it for managed disk or Azure file shares. But if you wanted to go for ephemeral disk within the node itself, within one specific node itself, you will be choosing the ephemeral disk option. And if the node is failing, the data will be lost. But it's more uh, helps in terms of offloading and gives a better performance within the pod point of view. And if at all I go ahead and see ఎందుకు ఇది చెప్పాల్సి వచ్చింది అంటే core concepts, tutorials. ఈ కంటైనర్ స్టోరేజ్ లో they were trying to talk more on the how to configure an ephemeral disk. Okay, there is another solution which came in, which is Elastic-SAN, which is in a preview mode, so we are not discussing too much on this. This is also a good one, but mostly I could see they're preferring Azure disk as an option, and few when they're focused on more latency and less to have lesser latency and more IOPS, which is input and output operations for data to be the data latency తక్కువ ఉండాలి, performance ఎక్కువ ఉండాలి అప్పుడు, and there is no need of data persistence. If you see here, there is no discussion that data should be there uh, after the operations is done. I mean, when they're doing the operations, and that is when they are going to choose that will help in terms of application performance and all that. And when you wanted to go for persistence and all that, most of the times they go for disks, or they also prefer Azure files as an option, which you can see here. Now, ఒక క్లస్టర్ కి ఆ, ఒక డిస్క్ ఎలా అటాచ్ చేస్తాం, ఒక ఫైల్ షేర్ ఎలా అటాచ్ చేస్తాం అనే డిస్కషన్కి వస్తే దే ఆర్ ట్రైంగ్ టు సే దట్ okay, you need to configure a persistent volume claim inside the worker node. You have to, within the cluster level, you have to configure a persistent volume, which is going to be linked to the Azure managed disks or Azure files. And that is the how the configuration works. So in your interview, then they ask how does the storage work for the cluster point of view, you're going to explain them that there are different ways we can choose the storage. And when you're going, you can go for ephemeral, and the next one is the Azure disk. If at all you're talking about Azure disk or Azure files from a storage point of view, storage account point of view, everything, we need to configure storage account persistent volume claim in the worker nodes, and that should be running in the pod as a pod in the worker nodes. And we will be configuring a persistent volume which will be interacting with our API, Kubernetes API server from the master node. And this will be configured within the cluster. And that will be linked to the disk or file share. And they would be talking, how do you configure a file disk? Idanta, use Azure Disk to create. So you can go ahead and practice these things. Within our scenario point of view, we are not showing this one. How do you connect a disk to a cluster అనేది మనకు చెప్పట్లేదు, బట్ హియర్ దే వర్ ట్రైంగ్ టు షో యూ మోర్ అబౌట్ ఎఫ్ఎంఎల్ ఎలా కాన్ఫిగర్ చేస్తామైంది అనేది. సో your container cluster has been deployed. Let me go inside the container, sorry, cluster. How do I do that? I have to first log in inside this client cluster. For that, let me click on this. And ఇప్పుడు వీళ్ళు ఒకటైతే అడుగుతారు మిమ్మల్ని క్వశ్చన్, గుర్తుపెట్టుకోండి ఇది. ఇఫ్ ఎట్ ఆల్ ఐ వాంట్ టు యాక్సెస్ ది స్టోరేజ్ అండ్ ఐ వాంట్ టు కాన్ఫిగర్ ది స్టోరేజ్ ఆప్షన్స్ టు ఏ క్లస్టర్, వాట్ ఈస్ ద ఫస్ట్ థింగ్ విచ్ యూ హ్యావ్ టు డూ? యూ హ్యావ్ టు ఫస్ట్ కాన్ఫిగర్ your clusters to be supported, AKS clusters to be supported Kubernetes extensions. And the command for is az extension add hyphen hyphen upgrade. So I kept it handy that this is the one which you have to run to uh, install extensions or AKS to support extensions. And this is building and pushing images to ACR. In our previous scenario session, we have tried talking about it. Create ACR, create resource group. Next. So let me first run this. AZ AKS list. Anyways, we have to first get the credentials of the cluster. For that, I have to run this command just to resources AKS hyphen RG and AKS demo. The cluster name, if I'm not wrong, demo test. That's what I thought. That am I in the right one? AZ account set hyphen yes, and select the subscription. And once I'm done there, that is when I have to run this extension. Now first, Okay, there. I got the right one. This is what I'm looking for. I clear the screen and then I'm going to get the credential of the cluster. Why? So that I can get the details of this cluster, whatever I want to run and everything. So that has been stored in this config. And right now I can make calls like kubectl get nodes. And if I do, that's when. So the question which you will get is where does this cluster config credentials will be stored and all that. Now you can mention that in the .cube folder under config that will be stored. And I could see here that we have three nodes. For your storage, everything to work, always ensure that you have three nodes which are been set up and configured which has at least four CPUs each one, so that the machine will run properly. Now let's understand this one. Enable container storage and create a storage pool. So in FML, we'll have storage pool, storage class as the concepts. You would also see in the core concepts. No, here you would be there are storage classes. There is storage pools. You need to go ahead and deep dive more on these aspects. Now, if I look at it, I'll just explain in this command point of view. Okay, I am updating this AKS cluster, which is I have to mention the name of it. That is AKS demo cluster, which is in the resource group. Every time if you don't want to give the resource group, you can just generalize your resource group name and everything. Then enable container storage, and the option which I'm choosing for the container storage is ephemeral disk option, and in that storage pool option which I'm choosing is NVMe's. Okay, so there are different types of, if we go in deep dive discussion about how an ephemeral works and all that, so there are multiple uh, understanding on an ephemeral point of view where an NVMe storage option, the pool option works in a different way. So anyways, I am actually, and this is what I'm saying to the cluster, that ensure you are creating an ephemeral disk. And in your cluster organizations ఏం చేస్తాయంటే you have to understand this, that in a cluster there will be different types of pods. You may have 100 worker nodes, and the pods are each pod is of a one or other containers. So the pods are being defined in the config YAML లో డిఫైన్ చేస్తాము. ఎలాంటి సెట్ ఆఫ్ కంటైనర్స్ ని క్లబ్ చేసి ఒక pod గా రన్ చేయాలి అనేది మెన్షన్ చేస్తాం దాంట్లో. నౌ దట్ ఈస్ మెంట్ ఫర్ యువర్ అప్లికేషన్ టు రన్ ప్రాపర్లీ అండ్ ఆల్ దట్. నౌ ఇఫ్ ఎట్ ఆల్ pod type 1 అనేది ఇఫ్ ఇట్స్ రన్నింగ్ like two nodes లో రన్ అవుతున్నప్పుడు pod type of 1, there will be pod 2 type of 2 which will have a different set of containers, I mean images and everything, which will be set of containers to be running, images to be running as a containers inside that pods అనే డిఫైన్ చేసి ఉంటుంది. ఇదంతా ఇప్పుడు ఏం చెప్పాలనుకుంటానంటే, దీనికి ఎఫ్ఆర్ఎంఎల్ ఆప్షన్ తీసుకోవచ్చు, దీనికి Azure డిస్క్ ఆప్షన్ తీసుకోవచ్చు. దీని నుంచి జనరేట్ అయ్యే డేటా పర్సిస్టెంట్ వాల్యూమ్లోకి వెళ్ళాలి. దీని నుంచి జనరేట్ అయ్యే డేటా అవసరం లేదు దానికి, ఓన్లీ పెర్ఫార్మెన్స్ పాయింట్ ఆఫ్ వ్యూలో అది ఓన్లీ టు జస్ట్ గివ్ దట్ ఆప్షన్ విత్ ఇన్ ద నోడ్స్ లెవెల్. So the data will not be managed by the containers. So when I want to do troubleshooting and all that within that node, that will be good enough to go and check what is it happening, and that is when I can choose ephemeral point of view. And few nodes pods వచ్చినప్పటికీ I can choose the other option within the Azure disk. So I am not defining that within a cluster. What I wanted to say is within a cluster, I'm not defining that entire cluster will be using ephemeral disk option. I will be I'm just right now creating a storage container option and all that. But what happens is in cluster, I will tell for which type of pods I want this ephemeral disk to be used. You have to understand this, that I can configure to a set of pods what disk option they have to choose, container storage option they have to choose. But once I have defined it, so if they're choosing Azure disk, they will not be choosing ephemeral. Okay. Based on the type of pods and all that, this డిస్క్ ఆప్షన్ హ్యావ్ టు చూస్. ఇక్కడ పాడ్స్, టైప్ ఆఫ్ పాడ్స్ అన్నప్పుడు చాలా మంది కన్ఫ్యూజ్ అవుతారు, ఎందుకంటే యూ హ్యావ్ టు అండర్స్టాండ్ వాట్ ఈస్ అ పాడ్. సో వెన్ ఐఎమ్ రైటింగ్ దిస్ కాన్ఫిగరేషన్ ML, there are like 10 microservices. I will say that AKS cluster కి ఏం చెప్తానంటే two two sets of microservices will be considered as one type of pod అని చెప్తాను నేను, అండ్ డిఫైన్ చేశాను కాన్ఫిగ్ YAML లో. దెన్ దట్ ఈస్ హౌ ది క్లస్టర్ ఇస్ గోయింగ్ టు కన్సిడర్, అండ్ దట్ పాడ్ కి నేను FML ఆప్షన్ చూస్తున్నాను. ఇంకో టైప్ ఆఫ్ పాడ్స్ కి ఐఎమ్ చూసింగ్ Azure Disk అంటే, I hope you're understanding that storage the way it is going to define. So next one, let me go here. So I'm trying to do this. So I'll go and run this command. అంటే నేను ఎంతవరకు నేను జస్ట్ సింపుల్గా చెప్పేశాను. మీరేంది అంటే యూ హ్యావ్ టు గో బియాండ్ అండ్ అండర్స్టాండ్ ది కాన్సెప్ట్స్. హౌ డు ఐ కాన్ఫిగర్ ఎఫ్ఎంఎల్, హౌ డు ఐ కాన్ఫిగర్ Azure Disk. చాలా కాన్సెప్ట్స్ ఉన్నాయి వాల్యూమ్స్కి వచ్చినప్పటికి. మిమ్మల్ని మేజర్గా క్వశ్చన్స్ అడిగేది ఏంది అని అంటే, పర్సిస్టెంట్ వాల్యూమ్ ఎలా కాన్ఫిగర్ చేస్తాం, పర్సిస్టెంట్ వాల్యూమ్ క్లెయిమ్స్ ఎలా కాన్ఫిగర్ చేస్తాం. సో దానికి వెళ్ళి మీరు ఒకసారి ఈ జస్ట్ వన్ పర్టికులర్ సినారియో మీరు చేస్తే చాలు. ఓకే, దే విల్ బి లిటరలీ షోయింగ్ యూ హౌ టు కాన్ఫిగర్ ది డిస్క్ ఆప్షన్ ఇదంతా. దాంట్లో మీకు దే విల్ ట్రై టు షో, వాట్ డు ఐ సే, హియర్ ఇట్ ఇస్. దే విల్ షో యూ సో హౌ టు కాన్ఫిగర్ స్టోరేజ్ క్లాస్. దిస్ ఇస్ వాట్ ఇట్ ఇస్. How do you configure persistent volume claim? Okay. How do you configure persistent volume when you're linking your volume? So if you would be linking, once you define this one, you're going to link it. And the mounting, that usually you will do it to what location you want it to go, say within your node. ఇదంతా కూడా పెట్టుకోవచ్చు కావాలి అనుకుంటే. సింగిల్ నోడ్ అంటే విత్ ఇన్ వన్ క్లస్టర్. ఇక్కడ ఇక్కడ ఏం ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తానంటే, నీ దగ్గర మల్టిపుల్ నోడ్స్ ఉన్నాయి కానీ విత్ ఇన్ వన్ నోడ్ లో మీరు కాన్ఫిగర్ చేద్దాం అనుకుంటున్నారు ఫైల్స్ లేకపోతే డిస్క్ అన్నప్పుడు ఎలాగా అనేది చెప్తున్నాడు. ఆ, ఇంకేమున్నాయి, బట్ యూ కెన్ యాక్చువల్లీ learn more if you're trying to practice this. But here I'm just going to run this, which is paste and enable this option. So I'm limiting myself just to understand this. So I'll close this, close this, close this. Once I have created the container storage, ఇక్కడ మీరు చూడండి. ఓకే, స్టోరేజ్ పూల్. So when I try to kubectl get the storage pools, if I just mention this, I'll see lot of many stuff. Okay, I'll see lot many stuff, but in that one నాకు exter అనే పేరుతోటి కావాలి. That's what I'm more cared about. Cannot storage NVMe as none of the port pools support fMRL NVMe disk. So this is another issue. They have to be supporting NVMe, and I can't be changing the nodes right now. It's a very huge mess. If I want to change it, I have to node pools Kelly. I have to change the family size of the disks and all that. If I change it, it's going to take the update of each one will take certain time. Mm-mm. Have to go inside the resources node. This is the VMSS. Inside this, I have to check the size and I have to change it to something else. So then I'll try to change this one. But even is going to take certain time because each instance will be getting upgraded to that one by one, one by one. They will update the family size of this. We can do that. Anyways, I did one mistake. I didn't look at, excuse me. So I can do one jugaad. I have to look at the storage options which I have enabled. Mm, it may do it at its own inconvenience. How do that has to be changed? Adanta, it will try to do it. Uh, I'll just look at what possible way solution we can have. So what I try to do is I have to recreate the entire cluster, and I choose storage optimized as the one. Had to increase the quota because it is actually taking at least a minimal 8 CPU of size. And ephemeral is not something which is commonly used other than if you are going for big data related data entities or NoSQL data entities point of view. And we had to rerun the command of AZAKS create credentials so that we can update the cluster credentials, and then we are be able to run this command to create a storage container with an option of this ephemeral, and then choosing the storage pool option as NVMe. Mm. So it's going to run. Meanwhile, just want to show is then we are going to get the list of storage pools. Inside that, we can see what all storage pools are there, and we can look for with this name Exter, and uh, then we can actually get more details about that specific storage pool. And we want to get more details about the storage pool only to check whether it is ready or not. And once that is done, we will be creating a pod. What I want to hear that they are trying to show in this document is they're trying to create a pod which will how to load an ephemeral volume. That's it. And once that is done, they're uh, deleting that entire pod and the storage pool, everything. So just as an conceptual understanding point of view, using a cluster, how do you load an ephemeral volume to your pod? For that point of view, they try to show this. And this is kind of something important, the storage pool is specifically that you can copy that here. So when I look at kubectl get storage pools, you would be understanding why I'm choosing why I have to run this command specifically, or why they showed running this command is to ensure that can get this one data here. And you can look at the storage class name. So when replaced with the storage class name, if different, so usually it will be the same one. When we are trying to look at it, we'll be understanding it. And here kubectl, they're trying to run the command of that one. And this is everything is there in this. And this clone repository, we'll anyways have to clone it and then run it. Mm, Once that is done, They're just looking at how to get the pod details and everything. We'll also try to run that everything. And they actually wanted to show you how much disk capacity is there in the ephemeral disk and all that. So they even tried showing it and then deleted the pod, deleted the storage pool, and ensure that all this has been updated in the cluster. It's taking some more time, but this is what is the demo is trying to do it. So let us wait. So it ran. Now few things which we'll have to do is take the storage pool and all that. So how do you do that? First clear it. I'm going to mention kubectl get storage pool. Our resources found. Interestingly, okay. What all I can run? So only one storage pool is there. I just try to do get all the ones. So forgot it was an icon capital A. Uh, so we could see here that the only storage pool which we have is with external namespace. And if I go inside this, the storage pool name is this ephemeral disk name. I would prefer to use this one as a naming convention than the previous one which was mentioned there. Then here the storage pool name which you can see is and if you describe will help us give more details about it. So it is actually talking about the amount of space it has and everything uh, in terms of the storage point of view. And then here we have to link that ephemeral storage volume to a pod. How to do that? They already have given us how we can write a config YAML for it. I want you to go and look for that and understand more. So I'll first delete this. I will install the clone the repository. And once I clone the repository, I go inside this. Now if I list for list files, and that's where store quickshot is not the one. Where is that one? For compose quick store all in one YAML code exter. Oh, they're asking us to create a one. Nice. They're asking us to create one. Interestingly, there is nothing on that. I'll just try to save here. I'll just click on insert, copy this, and I'll paste it here. Let's see what was that. Yeah, allocating 1 GB for it. And where exactly? Here, storage class name, and that one is ephemeral disk NVMe disk NVMe. So I have to remove this. my file volume. So this is all good. Just save it. And now the one which I have to do is I have to do a deployment. Now that has been stored as an, if I go inside this, it's been stored in here, stir pod YAML. So I'm going to deploy that. When I want to deploy it, I have to run this command. So first, what did I do? I created it. So let me just, for our reference, just running it. Now I'm going to run this command. Now if you see how fast the application was being deployed, kubectl, get pods. Now you can see that it is getting setting up. So that pod is setting up. You'll have to wait for that to get ready. So describe pod here. That one. Or something happened. So if I look at it, mm, it was not being loaded. Could be any reason why. I'll have to, did I change anything? Is it the storage class name is the issue there? Not extra, okay, storage pool name, ephemeral disk. I believe that is what they call it also. Hmm. I have to redeploy it. Forbidden may change. So I'll just remove the pod. It is deleted it and I'll redo the deployment. So you would have seen how am I trying to debug the things. So once the pod is got created, I just wanted to describe the pod and I could see what was happened. Successful attach volume, full links, kubelet, okay. And I wanted to see there everything is set in place. It's properly working. Now if I look for get pods, there you go, it's running properly. So I try to debug and you could see how I am trying to. I try to delete the pod and try to do the apply again. And then was checking the status, everything is properly running or not. This is, so the code debugging of troubleshooting, we'll actually do it in a further concepts point of view, because I feel first you understand configurations, then you understand more about how you troubleshoot in the content to the containers or pods or nodes. Is the it depends on what type of how you're troubleshooting. Networking is the most advanced, which I felt, connecting and trying to run it. And when you involve Helm charts and all that to deploy a complex container microservice based solution, it gets more complicated. So we have successfully have tried to create a pod which has been linked to a FML volume. Now you try to just delete these things. It's pretty simple. You are going to delete it. You're going to run these things, and the storage pool name is, and then you're going to update the cluster. To update the cluster, just same details. You're going to update your AKS cluster name and the resource group name, and then that's it. This will be done, and then delete your clusters when you're done. So next session, we are going to focus more on how do we deploy a container solution, which is pretty much simple. We will try to run the same commands. We'll take the ACR list, and you have to just run the application, which we have pretty much done in the first two sessions. We have tried to spin up a cluster, and we try to check. And if you want, we can even do it in this scenario itself, because there is nothing more in this. I feel this is something which is very important, because here we are trying to use service bus, and that reason is because there is a order service, and order service is actually trying to take orders and store it in a queue based point of view. And for that to function, how do you connect your order queue with the service bus? Everything is what they're trying to show, and we can do that later on, but pretty much sums it up. So they try to show how to deploy a container solution, how to link the container storage, how to create a Kubernetes cluster, how to store images in container registry, how to prepare your application in terms of Docker images, how to use PaaS offerings in terms of storage, in Azure AKS, how to scale your applications in, like, there are scaling point of view. You can increase the number of nodes and all that. So node scaling is one thing, and pod scaling, how do you use replica sets and all that. So that's the thing. And upgrade cluster, which is patching that and everything. So we'll keep going on as we keep. So we are good for today. Thank you. Please delete once you're done.